Welcome back, everybody. We have got a whole bunch of stories to cover today. So, we've got the rather staggering budget for Forspoken, which is always good to have a little bit of a laugh at. Then, the bleak faith copyright controversy with Epic Games has actually continued a little bit since we last covered the story. We've also got the latest Tabata adventure in the metaverse, cyber attack on the Stalker 2 developers, and the Pokemon Company's interest in Web3 with a little bit of a tumultuous Star Citizen update. And suffice to say, whenever we compare the budgets of Star Citizen and Forspoken, it is rather funny. All that, of course, made possible by today's sponsor. You know, phishing attacks. That's where scammers try to dupe you into compromising your security by basically trying to trick you into clicking a fake link. Well, NordVPN threat protection can recognize those malicious links. It can warn you before anything goes wrong, stopping the threat dead in its tracks, plus so much more. And nordvpn.com/BellylerNews is where you'll find a free month plus a bonus gift with my code, so just click that link down below. Now, Nord, obviously, as a VPN, lets you browse the web from anywhere in the world, which lets you do a lot. I regularly use Nord to access region-restricted streaming content. You can also use Nord to access, well, interesting regional pricing, such as the price gouging that a lot of rental car companies do based on your location. They'll also protect you from so many threats, like phishing that we talked about, and man-in-the-middle attacks, which is basically where people make a fake Wi-Fi network, called Coffee Shop Wi-Fi, and they try to pwn you with that. There's also their dark web monitor. You just add your email credentials, and they will alert you whenever your credentials appear in a data breach. And often those are basically sold around the dark web, and then people try to scam you. So much more too, like with NordPass that makes passwords secure, convenient, and dead easy. Of course, all on their app and browser extension that are super easy to use across your devices. And you can get a free month plus a bonus gift at nordvpn.com/BellylerNews with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Okay, Matt, Forspoken cost $100 million.
I wish I didn't already know that so I could give a live react. Because as soon as I read that bit of news, I was like, are you serious? $100 million? Makes sense completely.
Yeah,
everything lines up. I was not surprised in the slightest, and people will look and go, well, how did a game like that turn out with $100 million? And it's simple. They spent, that's $100 million over about 10 years of remaking it and remaking it and remaking it and remaking it. Yeah. Because they're an awful studio. They were awful at making games with money, and now they're shut down. You can see why. You can completely see why. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, that seemingly is what inflates budget so much. I mean, wasn't it like 120 million? I think that's the number bouncing around my head for Skull and Bones, and Ubisoft Disaster. So yeah, games, they can be expensive. And funny enough, they had to write off $100 million for the Avengers as well, I believe.
I think that must be like the magic number.
Yeah.
As soon as you hit $100 million, your game's bound to be trash. Unless it goes to $200 million, in which case it's probably okay. And if it goes to $500 million, like Star Citizen, then it's also bad in a different way. There's something to be said for this, in general, because I think there's a little bit of discussion happening recently with how the jump to HD games, as they were called, completely torpedoed most of the industry. And I think in terms of devs cost, we are looking at, this is one example, but how many other examples are there of like how much would Suicide Squad cost? How much is that going to end up costing by the end of it? And is that going to make its money back? And you can see why they're like, well, how many sales do we need? Oh, we need all of the sales in the known universe to make any of this back. Oh, wait, why do we need to charge $120 for collector's editions with awful bits of merch in them? Why do we have to have microtransactions and DLC and live services? And why do we have to consistently lay off staff after we release games? And it's all because games cost too much to make, and they don't just make them and release them.
And speaking of following the money, in this case, we can actually follow the Tabata straight into our next story because, Matt, what's the connection?
Final Fantasy XV's director now gamifying business for the metaverse. Fantastic. As Eurogamer pointed out, Tabata, who was the lead of Forspoken's initial development I believe he's the head of Luminous around F15 time, and then before he was unceremoniously dropped like a rock, seemingly, after many years of having 3 hours of sleep per night, allegedly, from him to finish FF15, and then all his grand plans for DLCs were thrown out the window as soon as he left. But yeah, now he is the Web 3.0 advisor for the Japanese government's digital agency, which means he's going to make a metaverse made of individual metaverse stages, which everyone's going, oh, sweet, there's a metaverse RPG for the government. Well done, Tabata. You've just scammed the Japanese government out of a load of money.
Yeah.
Go ahead, you beautiful grifter.
100 million is going to look absolutely tiny compared to this.
Yeah.
So yes, each metaverse service takes the form of a moving castle roaming around a virtual world. In the artwork takes form of a Xenoblade-esque headless angel. Users engage in an RPG-like experience as they travel through different realms and encounter a variety of content and services. Just that's it, you know. You're playing the latest role-playing game. You're playing the Elder Scrolls 6, and down the road comes a service.
Yep.
And some content for you to engage with. The Japanese government are pretty serious about Web 3, I suppose. I wonder, Japan obviously has got quite a few issues. You know, they...
More than a few, yep.
Yeah, they did absolutely terrifically. It wasn't like the 70s and 80s. Then their economy very much stalled out. They're struggling with this like aging population. There's a bit of me that wonders, you know, with any of these like new emerging fields, maybe the government just wants to go completely ham because they're kind of thinking like, all right, well, we need a win here, guys.
Yeah.
Hard to say. I mean, I have absolutely zero insight into their government, but
Yeah, I'm sure I imagine it's the same as governments everywhere, where some grifter shows up and goes, hey, I can make you a load of money with Web3. It's very cool. It's like, remember whenever we didn't have internet and now we have internet? That'll be the kind of change to expect. And people in the know are going, sure,
Yeah.
whatever. But the government
Well-
are going, that sounds great. Can we put that on a poster? Put that in a tweet?
we've already
happy?
heard from HMRC, which for the Americans is like our version of the IRS, talking about the digital pound sterling, which is quite
Yes.
funny because since most of us just use contactless for all of our payments, insofar as the average person goes, and I know that there's no crypto behind it, obviously, but as far as most people are aware, they already have a digital pound sterling because they open the Revolut or Monzo app on their phone and they use contactless.
Money's all made up. I think we know that.
Lovely. So,
Yeah.
right, the next thing then, Bleak Faith, the follow-up in this story. This was a really fascinating one because what happens when you're using assets from a store, you have integrity, you think that store has integrity because it's the Epic Games asset store, and then suddenly a bunch of our audience is saying, what the hell, dude? You just literally stole animations from Dark Souls, and then a Dark Souls modder says, and you used my mod to extract them. But it turns out it was actually just part of an asset pack that they bought that contained stolen content.
Unfortunate. That's the thing. It's honestly just sad that kind of happens and you take the brunt of it and all. But it's interesting that they like saw this all happened, and then they reached out to Epic, and Epic were just like, yeah, we can't verify that this is actually fine. Sorry about that. We can't tell you that it's fine. So they ended up having to go, okay, well, wasn't really our fault. However, it's still not right. So, okay, we'll actually replace the assets over the next couple of days. Which is... I can't help but feel kind of bad for them. But also look at them and go, that's how to take a story that's like, oh, look at these people stealing from the game they're inspired by, and turning that into, oh, hang on, these people have heart, these people have integrity themselves, unlike the Epic Store, seemingly. I'm hoping this is like a one-off for the Epic Store, and maybe they'll be like, hey, this is the first time it's happened, so we'll get some checks and balances in there, maybe. But I think it might just work as a bit of a marketing beat for Bleak Fifth, and I'll tell you exactly why, because I didn't hear about it, because it's hard to hear about video games these days unless you're surface stuff by the Steam algorithm, like we talked about in our recent video. And you go, okay, sure. Well, then I looked it up, solid reviews, and the reviews are not stellar, but they are going, hey, this has some interesting takes on the genre. And suddenly I'm like, okay, so the developers have some form of integrity. They're willing to correct mistakes, even though they didn't, like, they literally made them, but like it technically kind of wasn't their fault. They were hoodwinked into making this mistake. Mm-hmm. Their game's fine, and they're actually going ahead with it. And like, yeah, if not for the fact I have 20 billion hours of games to play in the next 6 months. I would actually, honestly, I'd probably buy it and give it a shot just to support them, which is cool. Although it's interesting to note that Epic have pulled the asset pack.
Yeah.
So they have. So clearly there's something up where they're like, this is bad juju. It's not like they're happy to go, oh yeah, the hell with this, is just stealing. Sure, whatever, it's fine. They are actually taking the right things.
Yeah. The strange thing here is, like, you may say, well, I can't believe Epic let this happen, but
How do you not like?
how do you not? Like, what is the actual solution there? I suppose it would be some sort of validation process in the same way that, a game has got to be validated on their store. But that incurs a pretty significant cost.
Yeah,
so it is pretty damn challenging, right? How do you do that at scale? Maintain accuracy. So definitely a challenge for any marketplace to deal with. I mean, even a similar thing, like imagine your Gumroad and someone sells some stolen shit. Imagine you are doing the ill-fated adventure into paid mods and a bunch of just yanked content from the Nexus gets up there.
Because that literally happened.
Yes, it did. So I suppose much like we always see, you can always trust grifters to come in and make a good thing bad.
Sure can.
Next then, Stalker 2. So this is quite unfortunate, and it is absolutely nothing that you would want to have happen to a developer who are already obviously going through very hard times. And that is basically GSC World, the developers of Stalker 2, are being blackmailed by Russian-affiliated hackers, at least allegedly. They are demanding that they change the attitude of Russian and Belarusian gamers. They add a official Russian localization and unban one specific individual from the company's Discord, which does make it have a little bit of a petty angle. And they basically claim that if their demands aren't met, they're going to release 30 gigs of hacked information, including art, maps, cutscenes, and other story elements. Now, this is one of those things, like, there are GSC developers who are literally fighting in that. The studio has relocated to Prague. So overall, this is quite rough. They've said this is not the first attempt to hack and leak our data, including personal information. We have been enduring constant cyber attacks for more than a year now. We've been through a lot. However, these challenges only encourage us to work harder, and we believe the truth is on our side. Evil will never win. And then obviously they ask their fans not to engage in any of that. So
yeah, unfortunate for a game that's so beloved by a specific part of the world, and also so, like, I guess so anticipated for so long, that actually comes across like a really, like, it's kind of petty, but it's also kind of going, that's actually going to be pretty damaging if all that stuff goes out and leaks, because the game has been so under wraps as far as I'm aware, like that role launching and everyone going, oh, finally, Stalker 2, it's happened, great, fantastic. And now some people are going, the hell with this. It's unfortunate that, like, I guess real life has to get messed up with people's video games.
I mean, take Atomic Heart. Obviously, that's from a very different perspective, but that's another example of that geopolitical situation, obviously influencing what's been going on in our industry. To move on to our next story, we've got the Pokemon Company getting into Web3. Woo!
Yay, money!
The bangers never stop with the Pokemon Company. Wow, they're so good. So yes, Pokemon are looking for a staff member to help them understand the potential of Web3. I mean, I suppose obviously, you could go for the Pokemon money, but I think Tabata evidently knew, hang on a second, the Japanese government are bigger than the Pokemon Company. Somehow. So yes, they are looking to go on here. This is an advisory role in the Pokemon President's office. How exciting, and as VGC have said, it's somebody with a deep knowledge and understanding of Web3, including blockchain technologies and NFT and or the metaverse, and will be deeply connected to a network of investors and entrepreneurs in those various technology sectors. So I suppose good luck filtering out the sort of griftery types. And who knows, will we be getting Pokemon NFTs? Will we be getting the Pokeverse? I don't know. Pokemon trading is obviously a thing. Axie Infinity. Like, how many, basically how many people have already tried to make Web3 Pokemon, be it Logan Paul's probable scam situation. I think there was like a little bit more complicated to that, where I think the people who were involved in that also got like ripped off by somebody, but it's a whole messy story that I don't know, and CoffeeZilla has talked about it.
Yeah.
But like that thing of the idea of collectible creatures that you fight, and there are various tokens. that's been done before. So I guess they're probably thinking, well, we already have weird mobile games like Masters or whatever. Why not trade Pokemon on the chain?
Yeah, it's a completely perfect match, honestly. And I think it's interesting because, as far as I can think, there's nothing that's tried to penetrate with the same like weight behind the IP as Pokemon into the NFT and Web3 world, at least not in a big way. So obviously this could just be exploratory because everyone's exploring it, and it's like, you know, if someone is racing down a tech tree and nukes might be at the bottom, you're going to want to join, even if you're not particularly interested as a company, just because you don't want to be left behind in that big race. Especially when you have the money to go, can we hire someone to explore this maybe? It's not necessarily a statement of intent, but at the same time, if they do go ahead with like Pokemon NFT stuff, that'll be the make or break moment, I think. Because if it
their
works,
audience will, like, at least from the artist side, their audience will viscerally, violently hate that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea is a perfect match on paper.
Yeah.
But I think when you dig into how players actually play Pokemon, I don't think anyone's interested in literal ownership. They want to have that ownership within the world, within the play space of Pokemon, not within the real world. So I think this could be, if they go with it, could be a big make or break. Because imagine Pokemon NFT happens. On one hand, it could be a massive success. And everyone goes, oh, NFTs do work, but you need the weight of an IP like Pokemon. Okay, how do we do that? It all comes down to IP and like people's investment in a product or in a world, etc., etc. In an aesthetic, maybe with Pokemon, as opposed to a world. Or it could flop. And that's what I want to see. Because if it flops, then any time in any boardroom, anywhere someone says, hey, we could do a collectible NFT thing, someone in that room, probably one of the brains, would go, it didn't work for Pokemon. How do you think it's going to work for us? Get your head out of your ass. And then we'll be saved from NFTs forever.
Yeah.
That's, there's always a silver lining somewhere, and I am trying very hard to find it here. Oh, dear.
Our final story then is one of Star Citizen. And this is a funky one because one of my favorite games of all time, I say favorite, not best, is Freelancer. Freelancer was the final game that Chris Roberts was involved with until he moved into the film industry, where he produced movies like Lords of War with Nicolas Cage. And of course, eventually came back. Star Citizen happens. Star Citizen, like, if you had a game that was laser targeted to my preferences, it kind of would be Star Citizen. And that's why it's always fun to see the enduring shit show that is going around that game. Also, this is from the perspective of, like, you know, I have played quite a lot of Star Citizen. So it's one of those things a lot of people are like, oh, Vaporware doesn't exist. Oh, no, it does. Put dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and maybe a few more dozens of hours into Star Citizen. But it's one of those things of, like, Chris Roberts, he does the opposite of sandbagging with his dates. At least he did. He's basically, I think, really, he doesn't talk about, like, dates as much anymore. So what's actually happened then? Well, what's happened is the contents of this trailer, which is basically full in-game persistence. Right? Now, previously, you know, there would be a decent amount of, or there'd be some persistence, but it wouldn't really be complete, which meant that, you know, the illusion would be kind of broken, you know? So persistence coming in basically means that the verse can actually feel real. You know, doing a salvaging operation, right? Piracy, things like that kind of actually mattering and stuff. Like, it really does make a lot more of that game work. Also, we've got some next-gen graphics rendering, locations, some other missions. Overall, hefty update. We have an impressive, you know, trailer that is, like, in-engine stuff, but blew up.
Of course it did.
So it has been broken for days. The launcher is now talking about the issues. There's no signs of this abating right now. And it's basically a situation of whenever you are, you know, whenever you have their funding model, it's a very delicate balance. And it's one that they've messed up quite a lot because evidently they have made a shift over to being a live service, sort of like live development game. Which has definitely had, in some ways, its pros, because look at the size of that budget. There's no other way that a game that's trying to achieve what it's trying to achieve, you know, would happen without that. But you obviously do know the cons. Now, if you want some, I'd say, decently balanced coverage of the game, take a look at Level Cap Gaming. You know, if you go, is it Hearth? No, I've forgotten the name of the system, or the planet, but it's basically a bit like Coruscant in Star Wars. And you see when you're flying around there in your ship, it is one of those, You know those like moments in gaming that are just a bit jaw-dropping, that are just like, holy shit, I cannot believe this is happening right now? That is what flying around that planet is like, just because of like the sheer scope and scale. It's one of those things. Whenever I've played the game, I really enjoy the flight model. I enjoy the combat. I enjoy the, I do enjoy the way that like things are slow, and the animations play out, and it is what it is. Even doing some combat missions, I was absolutely goddamn shocked that I was enjoying it as a tactical shooter, but I was. Even though there's one mission where you fly your ship up to like a pirate infested, basically big yacht in space, right? And you get out of your ship, you fucking float over to it, you then basically raid this big yacht in space, while you're going between like floating around outside Moonraker style, in 0G, then you go in and you're playing a tactical shooter. And it all felt really good. And this is a tactical shooter where, your heart rate matters. You got big, bulky armor. And essentially that thing. The version of this game where they pull it together and it actually succeeds is, in my view, like a dream game. But it's hard to do that, isn't it? Because, like, even think about their shifting and changing with the engine. Even think about the shifting and changing technical requirements. The way that this game had truly mind-boggling graphics when it was first talked about. And in many ways, like, it can still be one of the most jaw-dropping games you can play on a good system. But you look at some of its character models and you're like, yep, that's a bit rough. One of those funky situations that then opens them up to, number one, the constant screaming of Derek Smart. Not particularly accomplished game developer, I would say, when you look at Derek Smart's history that feels in its own way a little bit grifty sometimes. But yeah, it's one of those situations where it's just rough.
I think it's interesting because I personally have like zero interest in that game. Not my genre, not my anything, especially like big persistent worlds. No, I want to experience it a couple hours and I'm like, yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Matt, have you ever heard of Squadron 42? The single player campaign that will come out sometime this century.
Yeah.
Will Mark Hamill still be kicking before his performance makes it out to the public? Who knows?
Yeah, I think to me it's interesting.
It'll be the son of Christopher Roberts who ships this game.
Jesus.
Maybe this is going to be the first like hereditary monarchy style of game development. Like, the way, right? No, this is it. This is the pitch. The great cathedrals of old where multiple generations toiled for a project greater than themselves.
Yes.
That is Star Citizen.
Like, honestly, it looks like it's through sheer persistence and burning through venture capital investor money, it's kind of doing that.
Well, it's fan funding.
Yeah, it's fan funding. Yeah,
that's the thing. Yeah. Oh boy, people will buy those virtual spaceships. It's sure is something.
Yeah, so that's, I guess, then it's like that makes sense. If you have the money, why not continue developing your game? Especially if you could bring more people in over time. Then it does feel a little bit more like a live service that started on it, like in an early access way or on a bad front. But I think the point is that if this is supposed to be Persistent Universe and kind of MMOE, then it kind of feels like you're playing an MMO that's developing alongside, but no one ever bothered to tell you the MMO's out because it's in like this persistent odd state of like early accessy beta-y kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, the easiest way to explain that is I take your argument and I raise you Chris Roberts. I say this because of Freelancer. I said that it was the last game he was involved with, but it's not the last game that he finished. Because he wasn't there for the shipping of Freelancer. I believe Origin they were called, were sold to Electronic Arts. Electronic Arts got the game out. They actually, this is in the same era that Westwood is getting murdered. They end up killing the studio. There was a Freelancer 2 in development, which I will eternally cry about. Yep. But Freelancer is one of those games, it was supposed to have big dynamic economy. Mm-hmm. A lot of very cool features that you will absolutely see in Star Citizen, or at least see in the plans for Star Citizen. But it was one of those things. Freelancer, it was behind schedule. It was overly ambitious. It was a Chris Roberts game. But then it's Chris Roberts. You got to look at that great lineage of space games, where we had our Wing Commanders. Over on the other side, obviously, we had Elite. Just now, morphed into Elite Dangerous, which is a game that certainly had its ups and downs. It is coming from that, pretty amazingly innovative era when you look at, what those games were able to achieve with what they had. And I think it was one of those things where, especially with Roberts, this boundless ambition, which, you know, you could even see in the Wing Commander movie. You could even see that he was able to just be like, hello there, Mark Hamill, Gillian Anderson, Mark Strong, John Rhys Davies, fucking Gimli's in it. You're playing, if you're playing Freelancer, it's like, yeah, okay. There's John Rhys Davies, Gimli in Lord of the Rings. He is my boy, and he's awesome. Matt was watching me play Freelancer in the office. It was a time where like I was feeling particularly down, so I just retreated into playing Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth 1 and Freelancer. And I think like your opinion of it was like, oh yeah, this is a 10 out of 10, 7 out of 10 experience. Yep. Just really like, all right, is George Takei here as a like I don't know, like fucking Yakuza pirate man in space? Yes, he is. All right. Is that Jennifer Hale, who is my bestie? Sure, whatever. It's just that thing. Chris Roberts be Chris Roberts. I think that ultimately, I don't think this is a scam. I don't think that Star Citizen is a scam. I think it is bad project management. Yeah,
that's exactly it. It's almost echoes of what we talk about when we talk about Overwatch 2. When we say this is like a perfectly fine game, maybe even a good one, depending on who you ask, but it's a bad product because people are like, what's going on? Where's the stuff? Whereas Star Citizen is very much the same, where you say all that about Chris Roberts, and there's only one name that comes to my mind when you're saying that, and that is, echoes of Peter Molyneux. Fantastic. But then people think Peter Molyneux, oh yeah, scam. That's all the scams. Fable's good, but it's all scams. Black and White, good, all scams. Everything else has been pure scams.
Oh, remember Goddess?
And
Goddess Wars.
Yeah, exactly. all scams. So I think it's like Star Citizen needs someone with an eye for marketing to join that team.
Oh no more marketing. No. What has happened is they've actually been pretty fucking good at marketing, and that has been their Achilles heel.
Yeah.
Because people see like, oh, is that man who is lead actor in Slow Horses and plays Detective Gordon in Dark Knight movies? English actor, very good.
Can't remember his name.
They're like, is that man giving a speech? And then I find out all these famous actors are in it. And then I see a really cool trailer with Mark Hamill zooming about in space. How cool. Great. I can't wait to play Squadron 42. Where is Squadron 42? So it's not a... I mean, I know what you mean. It is a thing of marketing in that community engagement way. Yeah. And in fairness, Inside Star Citizen is a really... It's awesome. The way that they like actually do all that on YouTube is great. I really enjoy it. But they need... honestly, what they need, more than anything else, in my view, is episode 1 of Squadron 42. Because if that comes out, and it is actually that impressive... mixture of like, this gameplay is great, this feels real, these characters feel real, holy shit, this is so realistic, this is graphically stunning, this is such an immersive experience. They need that to come out and be an end-to-end experience.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. They need someone who knows what gamers actually want and how to position a product in the market, and then go, hey, here's Star Citizen or here's Squadron 42. This is a thing, and you know what it is? It's a video game that you can buy and play.
Oh my god.
Because if you asked most people what Star Citizen is, they would just be like, oh, is that weird in progress kind of early accessy space thing?
Yeah, most people have no idea that it's even as play. A lot of people still think it's like you just walk around a hangar. No, like you fly around the system, you do a lot of shit, and it's fun.
That's my default thing. In my head, anytime I see Star Citizen, I go, oh yeah, you fly around and do nothing. And that's not been true for years, but it's in my head, and that is... Obviously, you go, well, it's up to the person to see if they want a game, a little bit of, I guess, buyer beware, but opposite, where it's like buyer be aware of the good stuff. But it's like, it's ultimately their problem from a PR perspective across the wider gaming community. If people go Star Citizen, oh yeah, that's that weird scam space game that's really expensive. Yeah. There needs to be like, hey, like even, I mean, this is a long shot and they would need to be ready for it. But if they had like a big Gamescom thing, or if they got someone... obviously, I guess the Game Awards is an example, or something along those lines with loads of eyeballs, and they get to go, hey, look, this is a thing you can play. You can go play it right now for this much money. And it's like, it's in stage 1 of development. There's like 10 stages or something like that. It's like, this game will evolve to be better, but it is persistent, and it will stay that way. As opposed to people thinking, oh yeah, you like, what's the point? Because you just, shit changes development. If you're like, there's a thing you can experience, then people will be like, hell yeah. But right now they're just like, hey, here's a busted ass update. Sorry about that. So I think they need to wait until patches don't break everything for a little bit. So that'll be a good, but 10 years?
Probably.
Sweet.
Probably.
Can't wait to play Star Citizen when I'm 40 and go, why did they bother making this?
Why have they had to rebuild the graphics engine 17 times?
Yeah, and then I'll just go back to playing Final Fantasy X on an emulator. Like
Yeah.
God intended.
With that, it's the end of the show, but I do want to say that Gene Park's Resident Evil review or article has the headline of "The remake of Resi 4 is like reliving a cherished memory." So
I love Gene Park.
there is extremely high quality video game content for us all to play, and now we've ended on a happy note. Of course, check out today's sponsor. Thanks to them for supporting the show, and thank you to you for watching. I hope we've at least been a bit entertaining as we've rambled on, and
We're trying.
have a great day.
Good night.
See you next time.